the boy in the convenience store.
I don't know where to begin. One night I was working part-time in a convenience store. There was a small warehouse inside where you could place orders and watch the CCTVs. It was so quiet that day that I just went inside and spent time just watching CCTVs. As you see, our convenience store makes a jingling sound whenever someone opens the door. But then, I saw a boy on a CCTV. How is it possible? I didn't even hear the bell ringing. In a panic, I slowly looked out, but I couldn't see the boy outside the window. At first, it seemed like he was walking around in front of the snack bar, but he gradually came toward the warehouse where I was sitting. What the? I was terrified. What the heck is that?
Oh, tama nga naman kasi kung nagbabantay ka ng CCTV camera tapos meron kang makitang batang lalaki na nasa loob ng binabantayan mo na store, tapos pag tiningnan mo at chinek mo mismo at gusto mong makita kung meron ba talaga is wala ka namang nakita, talagang kakabahan ka talaga. Parang ang mararamdaman mo nun, parang kang binuhusan ng malamig na tubig sa buong katawan mo. Kikilabutan ka. Maraming mga senaryo kang may isip sa isipan mo.
Oh no!
Tapos mag-isa ka lang. Yun, nakadagdag pa yun. Lalo kang kakabahan tsaka matatakot.
Then suddenly a man came inside, but I was already too scared to dare to go out. When he saw that there was no staff inside, he turned around and tried to go out again. But at that moment, I almost fainted when I saw his back. Riding on his back, the boy was staring at me. I was frozen on the spot. And after a moment, suddenly I heard a big car and tires squealing. He was hit by a car and died right away.
Whew.
Well, I still don't know what I saw that day.
Loko-lokong bata. Yun, ibig sabihin parang nagdadala siya ng kamalasan o kapahamakan dun sa tao na kinakapitan niya. Kasi 'di ba nakita natin na nung paalis yung lalaki, nakakapasok lang dun sa store na yun is parang nakapasan siya sa likod. Kasama siya. Tapos pangiti-ngiti pa yung bata, 'di ba? Tapos paglabas niya, nabundol agad ng kotse. Ibig sabihin hindi maganda yung dinadala niya kung kanino man siya kumakapit. Tsaka parang nantitrip lang siya. Masaya pa siya sa ginagawa niya eh. Buti na lang talaga hindi masyadong nag-investigate yung babae. Kasi kung sakasakali, baka sa kanya kumapit yun at siya pa yung napahamak pagkatapos, di ba? My grandma's finger.
Let me tell you about my grandmother. Well, she doesn't have one finger on her hand. When my grandmother was pregnant with my uncle and aunt, she got her finger stuck in the cultivator's motor and it got cut off. Also, there were a lot of bad things that happened that year, and she had a lot of people who died or were sick around her. My great-grandmother took my grandmother to a shaman's house at the time after finishing her finger treatment. Well, just as expected, as soon as they visited her, she told her about her bad luck and some other stuff. My grandmother was about to go back home because she thought it was literal nonsense. All of a sudden, the shaman stood up and yelled, "Where's your finger?" Her eyes turned white. "Oh, no! Why did you attach your finger on in that place?" My great-grandmother was surprised at the shaman shouting and asked the meaning. And then she answered like this, "That woman's fingers went in her stomach." Less than a month after leaving the shaman's house, my uncle and aunt were born. And when my grandmother saw her babies, she was horrified. Both of them were born with polydactylism, so they both had 6 toes each on one side.
Wait. Ibig sabihin, yung sa sinabi nung shaman na yung daliri daw niya is nilagay niya o pinasok niya sa tiyan niya, ibig sabihin sa sinapupunan niya. Kaya nung pinanganak niya yung dalawang anak niya, meron ding mga extrang finger. Kakaiba yun ha. Tsaka yung mga ganong klaseng mga extra finger. Dati meron akong classmate nung high school na ganun eh. Sa kanya naman is dalawa yung kanyang thumb. Yung hinlalaki niya is dalawa. Tapos ang sinasabi ng mga tao dito is ang paniniwala kapag meron ka daw na sobrang gano'n na daliri is swerte ka naman daw. Ewan, di ko alam. Kasi dahil nga doon, yung classmate ko doon is nabubuli din kasi pinagkakatuwaan siya dahil sa kakaibang itsura ng kamay niya dahil nga doon sa ekstrang daliri niya. Hindi ko masasabing swerte yun.
Well, I still don't believe in ghosts or shaman stuff, but that story really gave me the creeps.
This horrible incident happened when I was 15 years old. I had a doctor's appointment to check up on my arm, as I had sprained it a few weeks before. I had to remove my bandages that day, so I was sitting in the waiting room waiting for my turn to see the doctor. Then, I suddenly noticed a very tall guy in front of me. Maybe he was about 6'2". He had black hair and was a neat type with a clean-shaven face. And he was wearing a long black trench coat and baggy black tracksuit bottoms. It was obvious that he looked a bit odd, but I decided to ignore him as I was often easily paranoid to strangers. However, a strong smell instantly invaded my sense of smell when he just sat next to me. He smelled like he had something rotten hiding inside of his coat. It was so horrible to endure it, and eventually made me feel sick to my stomach. I instantly got up, rushed to the toilet, and then I ended up throwing up. After cleaning myself up, I went back to the waiting room, and luckily that man was gone. My doctor was waiting for me at that time, so I went to her office, and she got my bandages removed. I told her about the man that I saw just before, and she said she'd seen him before too. She thought there was something off about him, but she eventually didn't say anything. Of course, I couldn't blame her, so I just greeted after that and left the hospital. As I was coming out from the entrance and about to walk toward my home, I suddenly heard some heavy breathing in an alleyway next to the hospital. At first, I couldn't see clearly who it was because of the shadow, but soon after, I realized that he was the same man that I had seen in the waiting room.
So sa madaling salita is yung nakita niya na lalaki na matangkad. Grabing tangkad nun ha. Is hindi siya multo o hindi siya evil spirit, kundi siya ay isang totoong tao na merong dala-dala o tinatago sa coat niya na kung ano man na nabubulok na bagay. Malamang sa malamang yan kung nasuka yung lalaki na nagkukwento dito sa story na to is malamang sa malamang yan yung tinatago niya na nabubulok is baka laman. Dahil nga 'di ba kapag merong mga nade-decompose na laman or bangkay o kahit nga patay na hayop, 'di ba nga sobrang sangsang nung amoy nun tsaka grabe talaga masakit sa ilong tsaka nakakasuka. Kaso parang hindi pa tapos yung hindi pa tapos yung kabalbala na ginagawa nitong matangkad na lalaki na 'to eh. Parang kinakain niya. Ewan ko lang, parang kinakain niya dito sa ano niya, sa angulo niya dito eh. Nakatalikod kasi parang kinakain niya yung dala-dala niya na baon. May baon.
Oh no!
He didn't leave. What should I do? I was terrified. However, there was something strange about his motion though. I looked more closely and I could make out him biting on a severed arm. And that's when I realized that it was the source of the stench I smelled in the waiting room. I almost screamed, but held my breath as much as I could, and then ran down the road to call the police immediately.
Siyempre naman, di ba takbo ka agad kapag nakakita ka ng ganun. Nginunguya ba naman yung putol na braso, putol na kamay eh. Ibig sabihin, meron nang pinatay yun, yung lalaki na yun. At kung ikaw ay witness pa, nakita mo pa yung ginagawa niya, di ba? Malamang sa malamang, hahabulin ka niyan. Isusunod ka na niyan. May pagkakanibal pala tong lalaking to eh. Yan ba yung sekreto niya kaya siya matangkad?
Oh no!
Maybe not.
As soon as they arrived in about 5 to 6 minutes, they knocked him down on the ground to arrest him. I figured out later that he was finally indicted on charges of kidnap and murder of people. And because of that incident, I didn't go to the hospital and stayed at my home for a while. I wonder What if I had screamed when I was there and he found me? Would I have been the next victim that he was chewing on? I think it was a good decision that I made at the time, and I'm just glad that I'm still alive.
So sa nakikita nga natin dito, 'di ba? Magandang desisyon talaga sa buhay na kapag may nakita kang weird, may naamoy ka ng hindi maganda at may napapansin ka na parang kakaiba doon sa tao sa paligid mo, kailangan umiwas ka na. Kasi malamang sa malamang yan, merong ginawang hindi maganda yan o baka may gagawin pa lang na hindi maganda yan. Baka sa'yo pa. At saka syempre, di ba, napakawais din niya dahil nga habang tumatakbo siya, ang tinawagan talaga niya ang pulis. Kasi nga, syempre, sino bang makakasuppress nun tsaka makakapag-neutralize sa kanya kundi mga trained na policemen. And syempre, di ba, meron pa pala siya mga existing na kaso. Ibig sabihin, hindi lang niya unang beses na ginagawa to. At malamang sa malamang pa nga niya, dun sa mga kinidnap niya, pinagkakain niya para walang ebidensya ng bangkay. Grabe. Ayoko ng ganyan.